Here to talk more on how life will change in Cuba and what might be next for American policy, we turn to Peter Eisner of Worldfocus, who recently spent a couple of weeks in Cuba reporting for our Signature series. He joins us from Washington. Peter, thanks for being with us. There was some advance warning that President Obama was going to make changes to Cuba policy. Were these exact measures the sort that were expected?
They were certainly spoken about during the campaign. President Obama last year said that he saw the need to change U.S. policy toward Cuba, and it's part of a larger review of what Cuba will have, what kind of relations Cuba will have with the United States. But these particular ones were the ones that would roll back the clock to the way things were before 2003, when President Bush imposed extra sanctions on Cuba.
Well, as we point out, you were recently in Cuba. How are these changes likely to affect, say, the average Cuban daily?
Well, greatly. In terms of remittances, Cubans really depend on money coming from their relatives in the United States. As we traveled around, it was hard to meet any Cuban that didn't have a relative in Miami or elsewhere in Florida or around the United States. And receiving money from the United States, cold currency, really makes a big difference in a country that's basically poor, where there's food but not always enough food, where there's not enough to just get those little extras. So this money makes a difference. Then in terms of the visits, just imagine opening up the possibility that cousins, sisters, brothers, aging mothers, aging fathers can now see each other much easier than was before. So it's really a human difference and a qualitative difference in terms of style of life.
Do you think we can expect more changes on the part of the United States here?
I definitely think so. There's talk afoot in Washington about this just being part of a multi-staged change in the way the United States and Cuba operate. And it's very likely that we'll see slowly but surely differing changes. The next thing, eventually, a lot of people hope, would be a complete opening of travel to Cuba from the United States, which could be really big for both countries.
Well, as we talk about all of this change and the possible lifting of the embargo, who is going to be opposed to it? Is there still a group out there that is very much opposed to this kind of reopenness?
Well, there certainly are people in Congress, and there certainly are people in Miami that still oppose any moves, any concessions toward the Castro government. But even when you take a look at polling in South Florida, you find that a majority of Cuban Americans of all types want an elimination completely of the embargo. You see that the younger people are most interested in just cutting down the embargo, and as you see, older people, people that might have actually been born in Cuba or actually were there fighting at some point, they really are opposed. But other than that, even Cuban Americans want an end to the embargo by some margin.
Peter Eisner of Worldfocus, thank you very much.
My pleasure.